All right, so we are in the 7-point mind training, point 2. And last week so far, just to recap, in case somebody missed, step 2 is really about, it's the whole thing. To put it in technical Buddhist terms, it's the whole enchilada, okay? It's the whole enchilada. It's the 2 bodhicittas. It's the ultimate and relative bodhicitta. It is the awakened mind. I mean, it's what it's all about. So, and so as I talked about last week, we want to start with some at least intellectual grasp of that, so that we know where we're headed. So we got a map book, so we know where we're going, and that we have a context and a framework with which we can operate. That makes sense, and preferably helps us stop creating problems in our own lives. Okay, because that's kind of the issue, right? We, without knowing, create a lot of negative karmic imprints, obscurations. We cause a lot of suffering. We do a lot of things in our own lives, not intentionally, but just out of misperception, that just create an incredible amount of suffering. So it's kind of nice to go like a directions when you're putting something together. Step 1, stop doing that. Okay, it hurts a lot, and it'll hurt for a long time. Maybe do this. This will be some more beneficial. And so if we kind of understand how more accurately this thing we call life operates, it's helpful. So that's where we really kind of got into the dependent origination, right? So dependent arising, and understanding that how we experience the world is a very subjective experience, and it has a lot of causes and conditions that give rise to each moment, and that every thing, person, and event that we experience is always a dependent arising. It's empty of these very solid characteristics that we attribute to them, that they're, they are this way. So I'm not going to go into all that, because we've been going into all that. But just in general, it's so easy to make something real that's not real. And we do it all day long. It creates a lot of problems. I was talking to someone the other day in a course, and they were talking about someone they were having difficulties with, they're having struggles with. And they said, it's hard for me to see the good in someone and their virtuous activity when I know that's not their true self. That they're putting up airs, or they're putting up a facade, but that's not who they really are. Because I know I've seen them do this. They're really like this. So I can't be happy when they're like that. Nice, kind. And so that would be a way that we can really get in a lot of trouble. We see someone doing something kind, offering something virtuous, but we know they're really selfish. They're selfish, man. That's who they really are. That's their true self. Well, that doesn't really hold up, does it? Is someone doing a kind thing a selfish act? It could be, maybe not be. But whatever label, attribute I want to stick on somebody, it's never going to capture their true self, or who they really are. Matter of fact, we're still working on who we really are, and let alone pointing fingers. Someone that can be selfish. Has anyone here ever been selfish? Anybody? Okay, 2 people. All right, that's cool. 2.5, 3. We've all been selfish, right? And we've all done really kind things. Am I selfish? Am I kind? And really, I'm actually someone who has done some selfish things, and I'm someone who's done some kind things. But I'm never that way all the time. Neither is anybody else. But our mind it hardens on, they're selfish. They're very self-centered. They only think about themselves. Right? Well, is that all they think about? Or when they're taking their kids to school, are they sometimes thinking about their kids? If you get them really angry, I bet they're thinking about you, not themselves. That'll observe a lot of time. So, it's really starting to understand that the way we speak, the way we see the world, the way we reify things, it just doesn't hold up. It's just not the way it is. It's just not the way it is. And we create a lot of suffering because then, once I know somebody's a selfish, self-centered person, that's all I ever see. And, matter of fact, when they come in the door, watch my wallet, man. What do they want now? You know what it's like when you get the number that pops up on your phone? It's totally unfair these days. We used to have to pick up the phone and not know who was there. You just had to go for it. It was a lotto. Today we can look at it and go, We used to have to unlock the door, rush in, put the groceries down, catch it before we lose the phone thing, only to find out it's that person we didn't want to talk to anyway. I mean, that was tough days, Now we just, So that's why it's so important to really start with, trying to get a grasp on how things actually are. So I don't need to waste a lot of time creating a lot more drama in my world that doesn't need to be there. And I can really recognize that as I interact with somebody and they did something nice, I can rejoice that they did something nice for that moment. And the world's a little better place for that. And that people can change. And that people who have been selfish can become generous and wonderful. And people who have been generous and wonderful can sometimes get pretty greedy and self-centered. And likewise, but people are changing, I'm changing. But all of us have Buddha nature. All of us have these enlightened qualities within us. And they're just covered up, they're obscured. And we know it. I mean, we all have had those times where we just feel connected and loved and kind. And then we've had those other ones where we're tight, we're centered, and everything's about me. And so this idea of understanding that there's a very direct relationship with me and all things, how I perceive them, how I feel, and the labels I put on them, it's kind of creating some drama in my own life. Because I don't feel good. I see somebody who does something I don't like. And then there becomes a label and an attachment, and when I see them, I'm instantly upset, even though they're just walking down the street. And a minute ago, I wasn't even thinking about them. Now I am. And it's like, so-and-so, what are they doing? It's a lot of drama. And where is that drama? It's in my mind. It's not out there anywhere. And then I carry it around with me all day. I stick labels. It's like walking around with Post-its all day long. Likeable, kind of likeable, somewhat jerk, all that. And it's just like, don't like, and then spend my whole life trying to just get to feel good and try to surround myself with things that'll make me feel good, which actually creates all the stress, worry, and fear because I may not get to keep the things that make me feel good. I might lose it. And then, it's just this whole thing that plays out that has no basis in reality. So we start there and say, okay, well, maybe I can at least intellectually get it. Then I can start working with it and start coming from a more accurate place more frequently. And that's where we've had these practices of really understanding the dependent arising phenomenon. And then this last week was to see ourselves as an illusory being, right? Illusory being. And just understanding that John is changing from moment to moment, and to observe John, as he engages and notice those things, and that these qualities will change and come and go. And sometimes John might be a little selfish, sometimes John might be a little kind, might be helpful on occasion, could be, and watch how that illusory being interacts and has an interplay with everyone and everything else as they arise. And so all of this starts with time and meditation, really looking at this, and bringing to mind. And we call it analytical meditation. So analytical meditation on emptiness. And then with some sense of that, then we engage in our day. So the ultimate bodhicitta is one that has a direct realization of emptiness, imbued with just that you can't stand that anyone or anything's suffering. Just imbued with this desire that all beings be free of suffering, and that we're all out of this own messy prison of suffering that people are tormented by. That level of motivation imbued into recognizing reality as it is, the nature of reality, and seeing it clearly. That's the mind of awakening. So that's point 2. That's half a point 2, actually. Yeah, half a point 2. And so it says, well, this is, what can be accomplished, and this is the way things are, and here's how you get there. So, see the world as dreamlike, become an illusory being. And those are very clear points, not that it's some vague idea. It's to really notice how everything just keeps rising in dependence upon what's happening in that moment, the causes and conditions of that moment. I can go from angry to sad to happy to moments. We have these practices in mindfulness where you keep an emotions journal. Try to keep an emotions journal. And you ask somebody today, how many emotions do you think you felt today? What can you name? And in general, most people, maybe 6. I was happy, I can remember that. I was a little frustrated, I can remember that one. I was a little nervous earlier, I got that. I can name a few. And then you give somebody a list of emotions, and they go, oh, I was that. And suddenly there's 30, there's 40, I have 50 different ones in the same day. And then if you try to keep track, you don't have a journal big enough. Were you agitated? Were you nervous? Were you, as these things arise, was I a little sad, a little nervous? Was I wistful? And when we're in those moments, that's who we are. I am sad. Rather than recognizing, no, you're not sad. You're experiencing sadness. It arises and falls. And some sadness has different levels of sadness. And it comes and it goes. And it's a dependent arising, depending on what I was thinking about. Now I'm thinking about something else. And the sadness shifts. So when we're talking about dreamlike and illusory, what we're talking about is not hardening and reifying, I am sad, they're a bad person, those things. Those don't exist independently of any side. But there are people who do harmful things. That makes more sense. They also are capable of doing other things. And so to be clear, so there's a conventional and an ultimate reality that we engage in. So we spend some time, we meditate on this, we try to bring it into our awareness, bring in situations, make it clear. And then we engage in the second part. The second part is relative bodhicitta, I think is the way they're using it in this text. So sometimes aspirational bodhicitta, conventional bodhicitta, but it's basically the ultimate is I recognize the ultimate nature of all things with an awakened mind. I mean, it's the whole enchilada, right? And so, but we're probably not there yet. And you can engage in one or the other in a sense, they say. Start here, start there. This other aspiration, it's kind of a way that we can use our conventional reality in a way that cultivates this incredible bodhicitta, this intense desire to not waste a moment of your life. For every moment is precious. It can lead to liberation of all sentient beings. And that kind of bodhicitta that we got a cause to wake up every morning. We got stuff to do. And And so that's where it is. There is this relational bodhicitta. Relative, I said relational, relative bodhicitta. That's a lot of pages. Yeah, the cultivate, so relative bodhicitta. So here the explanation is that following the discussion on ultimate bodhicitta, the second point of the 7-point mind train continues with the cultivation of relative bodhicitta, specifically through a practice known as exchanging self for others. It's a very powerful practice, central to the spirit of awakening, and also very similar to Christian practice of compassion. So here he cites Santideva, a great Indian bodhisattva. One who wishes to swiftly protect oneself and others should engage in the secret and holy practice of exchanging self for others. If we fail to exchange our happiness for the suffering of others, we will not become fully awakened, nor will there be any joy in the cycle of existence. If we wish to subdue the harm that comes our way and also pacify the sufferings of others, we should offer ourselves to others and cherish others as ourselves. So this is equalizing, exchanging self for others. And to put this in a good perspective, I think that's clear, is going back to the central points here, is what is the key source of all of our suffering? What's the key source? Someone would start with misperception, right? Misperception. But fundamentally, that misperception gives rise to what we call a self-cherishing attitude. And that's our fundamental problem, is really clinging to self. Self is more important than anything else. What I want, what I like, this body, this life, me, John. And when we really get that realization, then all this other stuff totally makes sense, and all this just opens up. Because we really think that the problem's out there. So-and-so would just treat me with a little more respect, And so that's that misperception that's just going to create a lot of drama. If I really understand that the real source of my suffering is a misperception of myself and a clinging and a self-importance that gives rise. That little hanging with the 5 Buddhas on it, my tape fell off, so we might want to fix that. I just don't want the Buddhas to wind up on the floor there. So, that requires some understanding. That's why that practice with the illusory being is to start to understand, that this sense of self that I grab onto, that I cherish, that I defend so strongly, it doesn't really exist, this self. This self that I hang on to, it doesn't exist. It's nowhere to be found. There's a body here, that's to be found. But this sense of John that I carry around all day long, when I try to pinpoint that John, who's that John? Where's he at? Well, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult to find because he's not going to be there. What's going to be there is an awareness, right? An awareness of something that's aware of different aspects, of different qualities that are never really going to quite capture John. And John's a name and a label, and there's a personality that comes with that. And so this So if I really start to get that understanding, especially on the sense of awareness, that's aware of the body, that's aware of the mind, that's aware of the consciousness, that's aware of the images, but is not any of those things. Then we also start to realize, there's really no death in that sense. The body will come and go, but the awareness doesn't. And that this whole life is just one life of many lives. And boy, if I can get that, and again, not just because somebody said so, it really needs to be, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. It's not some blind faith. And it is something you can investigate. But if I really get a sense of this awareness, it's aware of this body that will come and go, that changes, things come and go, and that this is one day of 1 year of one life of many lives, and this body will come and go, and that right now in this very lifetime I have the opportunity to be free of a cycle of suffering, of rebirth, to wake up. Well, it's going to be pretty hard to find a selfish, self-centered person that you really need to defend when somebody insults you. Because when somebody insults you, that's an opportunity to see more clearly the things that arise in my clinging to a self that doesn't exist. It's an opportunity for liberation. And that all beings that I come in contact with are the cause of my own liberation. Everyone is a cause of my liberation. And it's a very different view. It's very different. I'm going to say it might be a little more accurate. It might be a little more accurate. So there are things that we can concretely do is somebody hurts my pride. I get angry and I don't like them. They hurt my pride. Well, pride is it's one of the 6 poisonous attitudes. I mean, pride is what creates a lot of suffering in my life. I'm comparing myself with others. I'm better than somebody else. Somebody's less than somebody else. It's this really difficult thing that creates a lot of suffering. So if somebody's hurting my pride, that might actually be a very good thing for me. Because if I was okay with myself, guess what I wouldn't have? A comparison with others. Right? So humility is the byproduct of being very okay. I don't need to compete with anybody because I'm okay. And so are you, and I can be happy for you. But we will look at that world and we'll see that they're a jerk and they're kind of really selfish and they're this and they're that, and we see it that way. And it creates these divisions and labels and separateness rather than the interdependence that actually exists. And getting this realization, whether it's right now just sort of intellectually or whether in meditation, what's really going to make a difference is engaging it and trying it and testing it. Is this true? It doesn't really help much if it's just an idea. Is it true? Well, let me try it. Let me see how things are. Everything in Buddhism is about seeing things accurately. That's all. So we see what's accurate. And you test it. You challenge it. See what happens. And that's how you get some realization. You get realization by doing it, by testing it, and having it show up and have results that fit, that work. Fundamental hypothesis, Buddhism, I say it all the time, is that if I saw clearly, I would not have any mental afflictions of anger, resentment, jealousy. All of those things are dependent upon misperceiving myself and the world I live in. See clearly? They're not there. So you can test it. You can start testing it. If I start to see more accurately, if I start to notice dependent arising, have you ever had a feeling last forever? Have you? No. Will a feeling come and go? Or will you say, I'm always going to be lonely? How many times have we thought that one? Oh, I'll always be lonely. I'll always be sad. My life's miserable. When we're in it, it feels true, isn't it? And then it's Tuesday. And maybe I got some Wiley Wallaby licorice, which could bring some joy and then some craving. Because I'm counting a lot of you people here and I'm thinking, I don't know how much is in there. See how self-cherishing, boom, can just show up, whether it's, whatever. It's so subtle. You can always be thinking about these things. What about me? What about me? What about me? What about me? Yeah, but what about me? So if we really start to understand that the core root of suffering is my self-cherishing attitude based on a misperception of self, not a healthy sense that I need to have needs met and, that I need to keep this body in good shape and have healthy meals, so that I can make good use of this life for liberation. But a self-cherishing, it's really thinking about me as a little more important than others and looking out for those little things that are going to make me feel pretty good for a moment. That's the source of our suffering. Then this idea of equalizing, exchanging self for others, what he's saying here is you're never going to get liberated as long as you're cherishing yourself like that in an ignorant way. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to recognize that all these other beings are also filled with Buddha nature, just like you. And you just can't see them very clearly. Just can't see them very clearly. And so this practice is one that just goes right at the heart of my self-cherishing attitude. It was a secret practice. That was the words he put here. For a long time, it was a secret practice. Should engage in the secret and holy practice of exchanging self for others. So for a long time, Tonglen, and this is what he's referencing, is Tonglen practice. He's actually just saying, I'm saying equalizing, and that's not what's said here. So he's really just talking about exchanging self for others, and giving and taking, Tonglen practice. And so with a Tonglen practice, we really see the suffering of others. We see their suffering. We see their struggles. We see their afflictive states. We see this turmoil of just life after life of endless suffering and torment and difficulties, and sometimes just the very conventional suffering. And we become willing to take their suffering on to ourselves. Take it on to ourselves. And that act of really being willing to take on the suffering of others, well, that goes right to the root of my self-cherishing, and it annihilates it. And then to give all of my merit, all of my virtuous mental states, all of my imprints to them, to want them to be well, to be healthy, to be liberated. Taking, giving. And you can see where that would pretty much crush through my stuff, Giving and taking, right? The idea of no transactional relationships, no separation. All beings, that's why I start with equalizing. All beings, we're all in this together. And really wanting the best for all of us. And that I'm willing to really devote my life to that process. And so where that sounds like it would be a pretty hard thing to do, if I know that it's actually eliminating the cause of my suffering, it can be quite a selfish thing to do. So His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, talks about being wisely selfish. Because a practice like this leads to total liberation. But to our Western mind, it could be, man, that sounds pretty abusive. Because I really want some of my clinging, prideful attachments and desires, So, one of my favorite quotes is, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to go today. Yeah, I hear all that's wonderful, but yeah, right now, I just want to get a jacuzzi and, go on a vacation. That heaven, that can wait. Like, there's no comparison, right? But we do that, don't we? We cling to my stuff. And so, this idea of practicing, taking and giving, it was a secret practice for a long time, and now it's an open practice. And it's an incredibly powerful practice. And there's a process to it that he really unpacks it in here quite nicely. And so often it's taught, just the mechanics of Tonglen without really the nurturing of the conditions that really ripen it in a meaningful way. Let me see where I'm at time-wise here. So let me just give you the fundamentals of it first, and then we'll talk about those conditions. And so the idea is that you can do it in a formal meditation practice. It's nice to do it in a formal meditation practice first. Really get the hang of it. And then as Venerable Geshe Sultan Gyaltsen, my teacher, they used to call him the Tonglen Lama. If he was breathing, he was doing Tonglen all day. Every person he's ever seen, that's all he was doing all the time. Just all the time. If you can really get a good beat on it in formal practice, then when you're walking down the street, when you're in the store, when you're in line, you can be doing this. You can be doing this in airports. So it's this incredible practice that can be practiced all day long. You want to talk about powerful transformational practice. And it'll ripen in so many incredible ways. I mean, really just shift our way of being, and can do it pretty rapidly. This is the words that he used here. I mean, he said a lot. Just one sentence here, there's all this unpacking. One who wishes to swiftly, fast, protect oneself and others. This practice, where I'm taking on the suffering of all beings, it's to protect myself. Swiftly. It's such a transformative practice. So the fundamentals of it, the fundamentals are that, and we usually start with someone that we love and care for deeply. The text will always go to your mother, and sometimes, we don't always have a great relationship with our mother. In general, though, most people acknowledge that a mother's love is pretty potent. They'll dive in there, tackle alligators, and you guys, was it in Aspen where the ladies fought off a mountain lion, right? A baby grabbed the mountain lion grabbed their little kid and ran out there and got her right out of the jaws, smacked that mountain lion. Yeah. Moms will do that. Yeah. So there's that force of mother's love, and sometimes our mothers were not that kind of mother, so sometimes we have that. But in general, we start with someone of that caliber, someone that we really care for. And then we call to mind and really think about all they've done for us, all they've done for us. And regardless of what anybody's relationship is with their mom, you wouldn't be here without her. So just fundamentally, everything you have in your life, there's some credit due. And so we think about this person, and we think about all they've done, and so just naturally, this wow, I want to help. And this then this love, that this love is, I want to help, I want them to be happy. And then we take a little time and reflect upon their suffering, their hardships. Imagine all the suffering. And some of them, if there's somebody we know, like our mom, we will know their traumas. We will know their struggles. We will know some of their stuff. There's a lot of stuff we won't know. But we just take a moment and think about all the stuff that they've had to endure, their fears, their insecurities, their struggles, all the things they had to do. And the compassion arises. And that compassion, we think, whoa, I really want to remove that suffering. I want them to be well. And so we visualize them, having gone through that process, visualize them in front of us. And we see all that suffering as these thick layers of just darkness that have restricted them. And as we breathe in, that suffering comes in the form of a black smoke that comes right into our breath. And at our heart, right at our heart center, we visualize this little black dot, my self-cherishing attitude, my stuff. And so this black smoke comes in, all of their suffering comes in, and it hits that heart, and it just cuts through my suffering. Then on the out-breath, this radiant healing light comes because my self-cherishing is broken through. All of my virtue, all that I've accomplished in all my lifetimes comes out, and we give it to them. We offer all of our virtue. Not even clinging to the licorice. We let it all go. And this openness. And we see them getting healthier and better. All their aspirations being fulfilled. As we take their suffering, we see them heal. We see them get better. With our love that we give them, we see their aspirations, their joy being fulfilled. And so this practice, when you first do it, initially, is really to spend some time bringing to mind their struggles, bringing to mind their kindnesses. So it's not so mechanical. There's a real heartfelt connection, empathy. And then this aspiration comes to really help them. And so it's ideal first to do it in 2 sections, because that's a lot going on at one time. Bringing in their suffering, hits my heart. Radiant light comes out, heals them, all in one breath. There's a lot of visualization there. It's just really bringing them to mind first, and then with the in-breath, just taking that in and seeing them getting better, and then letting that visualization come right into your heart and just dissolve all of my own self-cherishing, having a lightness. So first we do that for a while, and then we can focus on the other aspect, this love, virtue, merit, all that I have going into them. We just do that for a while. And then after a while, you kind of get the hang of it, and it'll go in and out more accurately. And we do a practice. And then when you get really good at it, then you move on to other people. And the classic directions are always starting with people you like, okay? Apparently it's easier to do with people you like. So, we all know people, and we usually have, I see a prayer card in here, people that we know that are struggling, and so we bring them to mind and we do this practice. Then we move on to people we're kind of neutral about, we don't know them that well. Generally, people we're neutral about, we just don't know that well. Once you get to know somebody, you stop being so neutral. You live with somebody, you stop being pretty neutral about them. Either like them, don't like them, it's not so neutral usually. So, and then you really bring them to mind and see their stuff, I always think of the mailman. I have a mailman. He's a tall guy. And he delivers through rain, sleet, or snow. And I always think of that guy. Because I see him a lot. I don't really know him well, other than hi and all that. But other people like that. When I used to do this practice regularly, when I was going to the center with my teacher, is I would pay attention to the faces of the people I walked by on the way there. So you and I, baby, we're meditating later, because I get their face. I don't know them, they're just a stranger, and I take them and I bring them into my meditation. So it was helpful because I started noticing people more. And then ultimately we get to the people we don't like. And again, graduated. We don't go right to the most challenging. We work our way up. Somebody irritates us a little bit, so forth. And then we ultimately bring it to people we don't like. And you can just see on the face of it, this could be a really transformative practice, right? And then, if we do it even just with one person, quite a bit, as we walk down the street, then we can just practice. We can practice in line at the grocery store. We can practice, as we're on the road with all those other wonderful people that are driving on the roads with us. I can use a little love and kindness. And so this becomes a really invaluable practice that we can put into practice right away. When we get to the people we struggle with or don't like, there's some instruction here that I think is pretty interesting. Any questions so far?
Is it what you're talking about right now in the 8 verses of
I will take in secret, taking upon myself the suffering of others. Yep, that's Tonglen. And 7th verse.
And is it some of what you're talking about equanimity also? How wonderful it would be if all beings were to embody equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and envy?
Yeah, the pith. So the instructions here are not really bringing that up so much. I started to go there, but I think that's because he's already hit all that in, dependent, the dependent arising of people and things. So in this particular, where he's at in this text, he didn't hit that. So there are.
I'm just looking for connections.
Right, yeah. So, but in the 8 verses, again, a Lojong text, just like this, a Lojong text. You're going to have these. Everything's about bodhicitta. And so this is one of the methods. Tonglen is a powerful method. There's 2 formal practices of what we call to acquire bodhicitta, to achieve bodhicitta. It's within Lam Rim, which is equalizing and exchanging self for others, and the 7-point cause and effect, method. So these sort of 2 methods. But right here, he's just talking about the Tonglen. And so in both of those, equanimity is ground zero. Ground zero. So equanimity is always ground zero, inferred, if not explicit. So equanimity, by the way, for those if you haven't been familiar with the term, is equanimity is this this way of engaging with others and self in the word equal. Equal is to be fully balanced, composed, not caught up in extremes of attachment and aversion. It's the counterforce to attachment and aversion. Equanimity, this very calm, composed, balanced state of mind, a way of seeing the world and others, that all, whether something really terrible is happening, something good's happening, you see them of equal value, and there's an equal value that you can associate to others because they all have Buddha nature. We're equal in that sense. So, that's a cultivated aspect that if you can do that, it's easier to be nice to people you don't like, right? So, let's see. All right. So they often use the word enemy in here, and by enemy, it's not like they're going to kill you or anything. It's just someone you don't like. So it's translation stuff. So we do friends, strangers, and enemies. So we get to the enemies. When you're working up to the enemy, don't postpone this facet of the practice, thinking you are not ready. It is worth entering soon. Plunge in and bring to mind a person you really cannot stand. Totally opposite what I just said. It's okay to work your way up, but if you feel comfortable plunging in. The first time I taught this, I remember it well. I was at UC Irvine. Yeah, he was out on grass, and with all these students, and I start with take someone you really don't like, and it didn't go so well. So later teachings by His Holiness, says you can work your way up. So different views, but it is, the point he's making here is by here you've already gone through friends, neutral people and difficult people. Plunge right in. Bring to mind a person you really can't stand. Perhaps someone has treated you contemptuously, abused you, or taken something that you really cherish. For whatever reason, repugnance may arise towards a certain person. Perhaps they have really done nothing wrong at all, but something about their personality or behavior gives rise to abhorrence. Really don't like them. I mean, these are strong words: repugnance, abhorrence. He's diving right in. Brace yourself for the next sentence. Because it is a mental distortion, hostility towards another person tends to be fundamentally stupid. So, as we enter this, if you really get where my suffering's coming from, this all makes sense. And, why am I so angry at so-and-so? It's just fundamentally, misperceiving things. So, as we look at a person as an objectionable, oh no, sorry, that's not what he's saying. As we look at a person with objectionable qualities, hatred invariably grasps onto that person as existing intrinsically. Because hatred itself derives from the ignorance of grasping onto such intrinsic existence, it naturally carries that same characteristic of ignorance with it. Hostility is stupid in the sense that it ignores the manifold causes and conditions that have given rise over years and years, lifetime after lifetime, to the present characteristics of that person in question. It's not seeing the whole picture. It's just seeing a very quick snapshot of someone that did something that I didn't like, which is not going to cover the totality of, who knows how they were abused as a kid or what gave rise to this thing or all that stuff. We just see this thing into that. To some extent, we may be free of the qualities that we find so abhorrent in another person, especially if we have had the benefit of excellent teachers with a background in Dharma. Has the other person been so fortunate? Has that person had close and meaningful contact with authentic spiritual guides who can show them the source of their own suffering? Or have they been deprived of this precious guidance? And that's something to really bear in mind. I think for me, when I do reflections like this, and I look at somebody, pretty mean and harsh, I wonder, do they have any inner peace? Do they ever feel fulfilled and calm? Do they have any inner security? What's their opportunity to be free of suffering? And it shifts that feeling. And then you start to recognize all those behaviors are a manifestation of their pain, their suffering, their fear, their insecurity, their clinging. And then compassion can arise. Which does not mean that we're doormats. Nothing here says be a doormat. It's not compassionate. It's not compassion for you or for them. It means you can address an unhealthy, harmful behavior without saying that that's who that person is. And maybe by addressing this behavior, I can help this person, find some qualities that are healthier for them. So boundaries are good things when they're coming from compassion and not a self-centered attitude. When, the question's always, what's the most beneficial thing to do here with us? Which is very different than ill will. Somebody does something wrong we don't like, boy, I hope they get theirs. I want them to suffer. This is the opposite. Somebody does something harmful and I go, wow, I'd like to remove that suffering, what would be a healthy thing to do? You know, is it to hold them accountable? Is it to set a boundary? You know, how do we stop this? It's a very, but coming from a space of really wanting them to no longer suffer and you to no longer suffer. So anger tends to ignore a person's, oops, boy, all right. We're already running out of time. Let me just finish this sentence here. Anger tends to ignore a person's history to reify him and to hold him intrinsically, autonomously responsible for every objectionable quality. Anger does something else. It hones in on small instances in which this person seemed especially obnoxious, narrow-minded, or superficial. On the basis of selected vignettes, perhaps even without direct contact, we build a caricature. In the mind of our own anger, we build a conceptual construct of a human being who has only negative qualities, a person with no Buddha nature. We look at this cartoon of our own creation that has no existence at all as a human being, because no human being can exist totally saturated to the core with repugnant qualities. And we feel, how disgusting you are. Of course, what appears in our mind's eye is disgusting and repulsive. It is also a fabrication of our own distorted mind. So, this is why we start with how things are instead of how they are not. Because we go around all day long with how they are not. And it feels real. And it hits us real. And emotions take us over and we get caught up. So all these practices are, well, let's soften those edges. Yeah, let's start with someone we like and let's wish them well. Let's do some practice. Let's become willing to take on some suffering of some others. Maybe somebody I like a lot. I'm willing to do that. And we work at it. We expand that out. And that softens that hardened edge of how I reify people and things. It opens up the heart and it allows me to be a little more able to see others differently, more accurately. Again, it's always more accurately. And so that's the pith instructions at this point of taking and sending, Tonglen practice. Let's do our dedicating the merit and wisdom that we've accumulated here today for the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us dedicate the merit and virtue that we have accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and find liberation. May we be able to use the merit and the wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to help us cultivate the mind of awakening, complete liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. All right. Well, once again, thank you all so much. Joy and honored to be here. And thanks for joining us online. May you be well. Practice that giving and taking. And we'll see when I'm looking at you. All right, be well.